Hello, everybody. I hope your evening is going fantastic. Welcome to a special episode of the Tracy Show. I'm going to let my guest introduce himself. And normally I would show a bunch of screenshots with all my information on it. But since I literally thought this interview was tomorrow and not today, which shows you I need a lot of help, then we're not going to do it. But I'm just going to definitely tell you hit that subscribe button. Hit it, smash it, obliterate it. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. So I'm at 380, which if I can't do math, I think that's like 620 I'm away. We're trying to get to 1,000 before December. So please hit that subscribe button. Also hit that notification button to know when I go live. We're going to be talking about MMT and the follow-up questions that I have, but I'm going to let my guest introduce himself first.
Oh, thank you so much, Tracy. So my name is Paul Rubin. I am a volunteer with Real Progressives, which is a nonprofit organization attempting to educate the masses at the cross-section of modern monetary theory and class analysis. So we have a podcast called Macro and Cheese that comes out every Saturday morning. And Tuesdays, we have a webinar / discussion group where we listen to the podcast and discuss it and all the intricacies and, any points, questions that we might have about it, all that kind of stuff. But Macro and Cheese is kind of like it started as solely as an MMT podcast, but it's gone a lot of different directions, which is really important. Educating people on everything from political economy to imperialism and all sorts of stuff. So,
well, that's that when Paul mentioned Tuesday. That's why I thought the interview was on Tuesdays, because I'm so used to joining the group on Tuesdays. I thought, oh, well, it's Tuesdays right before the show. We'll get done with the show. We'll go right to the. Nope. So, of course, we've been messaging each other back and forth, and I thought I understood MMT, and I realized I don't understand MMT at all. So I'll do kind of like what I do with Steve. I'll tell you what it is I understand. Mm-hmm. The federal government prints its own money. That's just about right. That's right where I'm at right now.
Yeah. So it's not an uncommon feeling. Even me, who's been doing this, been on a kind of a deep dive for the last couple, maybe few years. Even I get, to the point where like I think that I have got it all figured out and I can answer every question that anybody has, and then something comes along. We're like, wait a minute. Do I really have everything? It takes a long time to really flesh out all the details and to make sure that you're 100% on everything. I'm still not fully there all the time. So, excuse me if if someone in the comments who's more well-versed than I am is like, well, that's not quite right. So perfectly understandable. So yeah, there are maybe like 10 big points of MMT. There's a great synopsis by Randy Ray, who's one of the original MMTers, who kind of like lays out all the big things on MMT, and that's one of them. The government creates its own currency of account. It doesn't actually print money into existence. Money is all kind of digital now, and so it creates, the federal government through the Federal Reserve creates all money in existence, and then a small portion of that at the U.S. Mint and U.S. Department of Engraving, they actually print the money. but that's a small portion of all the money that federal government creates into existence. And so, yeah, there's only one way for the government, our federal government, to spend, and that's creating money. A lot of people think that money is some kind of private entity, that it's a commodity, but really it's just a system of credits. That's really all it's been for like 5,000 years. There's a great book called the Debt. The last David Graeber, the debt, past 5,000 years, I think. So it goes all the way back to Mesopotamia, where government, the state authority, would issue money into existence. Basically, they were doing it on like clay tablets, and it really isn't any different now. It's digital, instead of having clay tablets or coins printed with the king's face on them or anything like that. But ultimately, money has been just a tax.
Okay. I'm almost I was there right up until you got to a certain point. So again, this is going to be a whole lot of no, Tracy. This is what it is. So audience, y'all be patient with me, because I'm, like I said, I'm trying to really get this in my mind. So my question would be, if the government prints its own, not money but currency, that's the word I should have used,
Yes,
currency.
yes, currency, yes.
Because I said money. Oh, they print their own money. But okay, so they print their own currency. Do they how then do they decide how much currency to produce?
So that's really ultimately that's question for Congress. Congress has authority over how much money is to be spent, and it's right there in the U.S. Constitution. Article 1, Section 8 provisions U.S. Congress with the sole authority to issue currency into existence. And it is an important point, the difference between currency and money. So there only the U.S. government can create currency, but there are other types of money. Bank credit is money too. The difference between bank credit and currency is you have to, with bank credit, has to be paid back in full plus interest. With money, currency that comes from the federal government. So bank credit is net zero. It doesn't create any new financial assets. When the government spends, though, no, you're not in debt to the government to pay that money back. When a company gets some kind of government contract, it's not the same relationship as with a private bank, where the relationship is they issue credit and you owe them in full that amount plus whatever the bank is charging interest.
So that'd be more like my mortgage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And banks do it because they make enormous amounts of money off it, right? But so when the government isn't spending enough, and this has happened, throughout history, there have been about 7 times, I believe, where we've had public surpluses, where the government is taxing more money, more currency back out of the economy that is spending into it. There's only one place for the people to go to pay their mortgage, to pay their bills, to pay their healthcare bills, or whatever else. They have to take private loans out. And the problem is that a certain amount of private debt will build up, and there's only a certain, and you have to pay all that debt back with money that only can ultimately come from government spending. So if the government isn't spending enough, you will ultimately end up reaching some kind of crisis point, a debt bubble, right? And we saw this in 2008. We saw this in 2000. Yeah.
I think that's what's getting me confused. So I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I got this part, and I can't seem to build the building blocks. Like I got the base, But when I'm adding, I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute. But I thought you said, and so I'll probably be asking the same question over and over and
It's
over again.
okay. No worries.
So when we hear about the deficit, one thing I know is wrong. Our government budget does not work like my personal budget.
Not at all.
That much I know that. I know
Yep.
that. I understand that. I got it. When the government is creating, they decide, and I'm just going to put this in, just use this as an example, just to kind of help me get my brain wrapped around this. So the government decides we're going to create $2 trillion worth of currency. Then they decide who gets what and what's allocated for what, for what, for what. Where does this idea of, and I hate to call him president, but that's the title he holds.
Yeah.
He's talking about cutting the size of government. To
Mhm.
me, that doesn't make, if I'm looking at MMT and I'm looking at cutting the size of, those two things aren't matching up to me at
Nope.
all.
Nope. Yeah. So definitely. So Musk and Trump, they're using a narrative that's been, very popular for a scarcity of money narrative that's been very popular really since Margaret Thatcher. And there was I think Steve actually referred to this quote last time when he was here, but I'll read you the full quote. And this is, a lot of people, leftists alike, as well as Trumpers and everyone else, believe that there's a fixed amount of money that and Obama said this in 2008 crisis, that there is no more money, that we're broke, we have to borrow, quote, borrow from China and all this kind of stuff. So this is really important but very, very false quote from Margaret Thatcher, that she said to, I think that when she's in 1983, she said it in a speech to the Conservative Party. And she said, let us never forget this fundamental truth, that the state has no source of money other than money which people earn themselves. If the state wishes to spend more, it can only do so uh, by borrowing your savings or by taxing you more. It is no good thinking that someone else will pay. That someone else is you. There is no such a thing as public money. There is only taxpayers' money. And it's all false, because it's quite that last phrase, there is no such thing as public money, there is only taxpayers' money. It's actually the opposite. uh, there is no such thing as taxpayers' money, because taxpayers' money, you'll learn this when you get fully into MMT. Taxes at the federal level actually delete money. And so uh, federal taxes don't fund anything, unlike your state government, your municipal government, your county government. When they tax, they need your money to fund your fire department, your police,
Right, right.
schools, and all that kind of stuff. But the federal government, again, it's completely different. It's a currency issuer. And so when it wants to spend on something, when it sees a national priority for healthcare, for a war, I mean, that's what I think, as you agree, or for corporate subsidies. But I know that you're pretty anti-war. And so the government, whenever it wants to fund a war, never seems to not find the money. It always is able to find the money for its what it sees as its priorities. And unfortunately, our government does not run for average working people. It's designed to work for capitalists, for the billionaire class. And so that's what's benefits the billionaire class: wars, corporate subsidies. And so that's what it spends on most of the time. But this austerity narrative, the idea that the federal government only has so much money and that it has to act like a household, or act like a revenue constrained state government, or a revenue constrained municipal government, is the basis for Doge, is the basis for the austerity mindset that not only Trump has, but Biden had, that Obama had, that Bush had, that Clinton had, and going back to Clinton, that was the last time that a lot of liberals like to celebrate Clinton as this because he had a budget surplus, he was responsible, and he didn't overspend. But the reality is that his public surplus is by definition a private deficit. So if the only place for net positive financial assets to come from is the federal government spending money into existence, when it taxes more money out than it spends, which is what Clinton did, that means that we in the private sector, you, me, corporations, states, have less money to pay our bills, to finance our house, to do what we need to do in order to keep ourselves living. And so that inevitably leads to crises. And so all the stuff about about Doge, about making government more efficient, it's all nonsense. It's all complete nonsense. And I think that in part, they know it. But when you defund government programs, and this is like very, very common, capitalist tactic, it leaves the space for private entities to come in there, privatize. A good example is like the post office, right? There, you want to privatize the post office, or you want to privatize Medicare or whatever else. The people who are going to be benefiting are the private entities who are going to say, okay, we're going to swoop in there and take all of this opportunity to capitalize on it. So ultimately, that's what Trump's doing. He and his oligarch buddies see a benefit to cutting government spending, to punishing working class people and forcing them to look for what were public services on the private market.
But that's also I find that's also a libertarian argument, right?
Oh,
because
definitely.
I love all the libertarians that have ever appeared on my show, but I always make this argument. They always talk about the national deficit.
Yeah.
Please, in English or in Tracy speak, I'm going to tell you what I think the deficit is. No, I'm not. I'm going to just let you tell me what the deficit is, because I just keep hearing, well, the deficit is going to increase and we have to.
Right.
Let me backtrack this. One, are we borrowing from China? Two, if we're borrowing, if we have the ability to create our own currency, and I'm assuming they know this, they can't be that. They have to know this.
I think so.
So we know that we can create our own currency. We're borrowing for what reason?
Mm-hmm.
How are we paying it back? What type of collateral are we using?
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing is just like, I think that's what's causing my confusion, because I'm like, it's not making, it doesn't line up what they're saying. Deficit. Okay, so we don't meet the deficit. And we don't, it's not like America can file for bankruptcy. It's like, okay, let's just file for bankruptcy, Chapter 7 or 13. No, it doesn't.
It's legally impossible. It's literally and legally impossible. So the deficit is just the difference between what the government spends, what it puts into the economy, the positive, and the negative, which is the taxing. So the deficit is a yearly figure of what the federal deficit, a yearly figure. States can have deficits too, how much they're spending versus how much they're taxing out or spending. But the federal deficit is just the difference between two numbers, how much it's spending on a yearly basis versus how much it's taxing on that yearly basis. What a lot of libertarians and a lot of conservatives refer to as kind of a fearmonger about is a related number, which is the national debt. And there's a big a sign or a rolling scoreboard in Times Square of the national debt. Right now, it's something around like $36 trillion. And people they'll fearmonger about, oh, the U.S. Like you said, the U.S. government. There's no way that we can pay this back. This is, this debt is going to crush the future generations. We, just the interest alone and all this kind of stuff. So the national debt is basically the accumulation of all of those deficits since the inception of our country, since 1787, basically. So there have only been seven, I think, as I mentioned, there have only been 7 times in U.S. history where we've had public surpluses as opposed to public deficits at a federal level. There have only been 7 times in all of U.S. history where we've had a public surplus. And at every moment shortly afterwards, we've had a depression, a recession, economic downturn of some sort. So one way to think about it is that it's a record. The national debt is a record of every dollar spent into existence that's not been taxed back, and that now has been converted into U.S. treasuries. And treasuries are just another type of government debt. Your current U.S. currency is a type of debt too. That's all money is. It's government issued debt. And the difference between U.S. treasuries and the cash in your wallet or the cash in your bank account is cash doesn't earn interest. So it just sits there. It over time it loses its value because of inflation. And U.S. treasuries or U.S. bonds, notes, bills, they earn a nominal interest rate that's greater than the interest rate of which is zero of cash. And so the national debt is not a burden to any one of us. They're the government's liabilities. They're the government. The U.S. government is obligated to pay back the interest. It's not on any one citizen to do it. And so it's a common fear-mongering tactic about, okay, you're not going to be able to afford this and blah 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 blah. But it's not a debt it's not our U.S. citizens' debt. It's a liability of the U.S. government, not ours.
I'm closer. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay.
So you said it's under the obligation of the government to pay it back.
Yep.
So now my follow-up question is, how does the government pay it back?
The same way it pays for everything. It just types in digits on a spreadsheet at the Federal Reserve. The U.S. Congress will give instructions to the Federal Reserve to type in numbers into a spreadsheet, and they send them off. And
well,
so
this doesn't mean like a tax. Like because I can imagine somebody having that question. It's like, well, how does the government pay for it? Well, by taxing people.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. So yeah, so taxes are, and this is a fundamental tenet of MMT, and it's not necessarily exclusive to MMT, I suppose. There are other probably non-MMTers that will recognize this, but taxes at the federal level don't fund public spending. And I think Steve used this. It's a really good example. If you think about a pizza palace, Sbarro's or whatever, they give out pizza coupons, for a free pizza or whatever. When those coupons, and the coupons are like currency, when those coupons are given out to customers, when they take them back for redemption, just like your tax dollars are taken back to redeem your tax obligations, the Sbarro's doesn't. They throw them away. They don't have any use. Think about what a value of a Sbarro's free pizza coupon is. The Sbarro's, they just print more. They don't need the pizza coupons. They don't recycle the pizza coupons. It's not like, okay, we've given away all these pizza coupons, and now Can we not issue more pizza coupons? No, of course we can. And it's not like they recycle them either. They fulfilled their use. Their use value is for the customer to get the pizza, right? And the value for you as a taxpayer when you pay your dollar tax to the federal government is to keep you in good standing with the federal government. That's the purpose of taxation, really, to keep you indebted to the federal government, to keep you needing its dollar. You need to keep earning those dollars in order to fulfill your obligation to the federal government. The taxes to currency issuers create demand for that currency. If we didn't have any taxes, and would be a kind of a comment on like libertarian logic. If we didn't have taxes at all, any taxes at the federal level at all, the value of the dollar would drop to zero, because no one would need those dollars to fulfill their obligations to the federal government. We'd have lots of other problems, right? Our economy would break down because how do we be facilitating exchange? I mean, that's another conversation. But taxes at the federal level, as opposed to the state level, as opposed to the municipal level, don't fund federal spending. Think of it like this: why would a currency issuer, the federal government, need your dollars that it freely creates? It's the monopoly currency issuer. It doesn't need your dollars to fund anything that it does, right? I mean, it would be kind of crazy to think that the entity that issues this currency into existence would need your currency to do anything. It doesn't. And so I don't know. I don't want to go too far. Does that make sense?
Because I was like, yeah, you were teetering. I'm like, okay, no, bring it back. Okay. So now that we've kind of got that where it's sort of starting to get refreshed again, I wonder, like when I try to explain MMT, first of all, people out there, don't come to me for explanations. I'm learning. I'm really, really learning. I'm at the very, very beginning stages.
Yep.
But one thing I do understand is this. What I don't understand is how we can use more. Well, no, that's a question for later. I'm going to scrap that question and ask it later. But I want to talk about something else, because when I first did my first podcast with Steve, everybody's like, oh, yeah, I'm concerned. I still, I'm not fully bought in. And they told me reasons, and it just went, well, I don't know I don't know. And they mentioned something, and please do not laugh at this when I say this, because this is what I truly, honestly thought. They kept saying fiat currency.
Yes.
I thought they were talking about a car. See, you laugh. Yeah. I said, don't laugh. I said, don't laugh. And you just went ahead and just started laughing. I literally thought, oh, they're talking about the car fiat, FAIT.
Yes.
But apparently there's this currency called fiat currency. Went way. I'm like, what?
Right. Yeah. So fiat. I actually asked this question because related question to Steve on one of our organizing calls, because I was trying to think of what would a non-fiat currency look like. So fiat just means by decree, by government decree. And so state money really has always been fiat. It's very, very, very difficult to think of a non-fiat currency. Now, I think often what people are thinking of when they say fiat, they think that it's not backed by anything, that it's not backed by gold or silver or some other commodity. But fiat just means by government decree. So what that means is
they don't mean the car.
They don't mean the car. So I actually don't know where the Fiat, the car, I think it's an Italian car company. I don't know where that.
Yes, it is.
I don't know where that came from. But fiat just means by government decree. So what that means is the government issued this issues it into existence. It's the monopoly issuer, and it sets the value of it. There is no other entity that can issue U.S. dollars or any other, Chinese yuan or a renminbi or Japanese yen, or going all the way back to Rome. I mean, the Roman sesterce, I think it was called, or the value of the Roman sesterce had that specific value because the Roman government stamped its Caesar's name on the front of it, and some of their seal on the back, and it set a certain value for it. By fiat, by decree. It wasn't and that's true for, I mean, fiat. It would be fiat for a gold standard currency as well. So before 1933, we had all currencies were tied to some kind of commodity. It was mostly gold or silver, and I think that's what people often think of when they say this is fiat. That it's not backed by gold, but going back, all state currencies are all fiat. So it's kind of misunderstood term, I guess, and so there's fear about the fact that, okay, it's not backed by gold, but the gold standard was a unnecessary, self-limiting system that instead of having the federal government be able to issue as much currency as it wants, and that not being in and of itself an inflationary factor. If you have only a certain amount of gold, or you only have a certain amount of silver, or whatever the currency is backed on, if you create lots of fiat currency, and you create lots and lots of fiat currency, and it's all based on this finite the same amount of gold, well, then the value of the currency is going to drop, right? Because it's being strained across this limited amount of a limited commodity, and so you have to invade some other country to get more gold, so that you wouldn't depreciate your own currency, or you'd have to dig up your own gold. You have to find more gold, so that when you're creating more currency, you wouldn't be devaluing it. But we haven't lived in a system like that for 90 plus years now, the United States certainly. And so they're fear mongering about something they don't quite understand. But it's used as a rationale for, okay, the government can't spend, we can't have Medicare for all, we can't have or a nationalized health service, we can't have public housing, we can't have a public education. We have to cut these things. We have to make government more efficient, because if we spend too much, then we'll have inflation, or whatever else. But none of that's true. And we can go into talking about the sources of inflation if you want a little bit later. But hopefully does that make sense about fiat?
It's making a whole lot more sense, but we're gonna have to skip inflation, because you were talking about glazed eyes. I will be like, what, huh? And then what? Because I don't understand that. I don't understand GDP. I'm like, okay, I'm just trying to get this little thing and then just build it. I want to just build it. And everyone watching, because I do see we have some people watching, type in your comments. Because like I said, that fiat, that literally threw me. I'm like, what are you talking about? I thought it was a car. Literally, I'm sitting there thinking, oh, they're talking about, no, it's like currency. I'm like, the car has its own currency? That's neat. I'm not as stupid as I look. I'm not. I promise.
No, I know that. I know, and you make great comments, and our discussion. So I know that I know that you're not. I know that you're not dumb at all. So, and honestly, the fact that you're open to learning this stuff is so critically important, because there are so many people who are just refuse to open their minds to this stuff,
Well,
which is
I just feel
unfortunate.
like, boy, I'm like, these people are really patient because watch me ask the same question over and over again. But I do want to
Okay.
talk about something, and I know I talked about this with Steve.
Yeah.
And because my number one issue, besides reparations, is Medicare for all.
Yep.
And there's a movement. Um, Now Steve did go on a rant. Steve, love you, but you went on a rant. You went on a rant on this, but I saw where he was going and it made perfect sense. Steve was building the case of it doesn't make sense. Well, let me backtrack. So what's happening now is a lot of states are trying to initiate their own Medicare for all
Yep.
plans
Yep.
instead of going federal. And I was like, well, wait a minute. The state only has so many resources, right? Because there's only,
Yes.
let's just say I live in Indiana. Okay, Indiana has a terrible governor. We're not even trying to talk about Medicare for all, but I'm just going to use Indiana as an example. We only have 6 million Hoosiers. That's all we have.
Mm-hmm.
Where we go? It costs, unless I'm getting this wrong, billions of dollars to run healthcare.
Yep.
At the state level, at our state level. If you tax businesses, which is what California is trying to do, then those businesses are going to exit.
Yep.
You briefly talk about, and this is where I was like, okay, now I
Sure.
understand it. The error of running it on a state level when it makes more sense for the federal government to do it. They have the resources. They could
Sure.
literally say, create $6 billion $1 trillion and have it go towards Medicare for all.
Yep. Yeah. So it is really important, and it goes to the difference, the fundamental difference between currency issuers like our federal government and states and municipalities, which are currency users. Your state of Indiana can't create money to fund, can't create U.S. dollars to fund whatever whatever priorities it would see fit. Now, obviously, as you said, Indiana is a more conservative state, and so. But if you think about California, or I live in Connecticut. If you think about Connecticut, enacting some kind of public health plan, they are fiscally constrained. They can't create their own money, so they'd have to raise taxes. They'd have to and on businesses, on individuals, and there would be most likely some kind of capital flight. They whenever we do try to enact some kind of state public program, that they fearmonger it. They say it's, oh, where you can't do this or else all the rich people can leave. And some of that is probably it really is just fear mongering that maybe they wouldn't. But even if you were to try to do that, if you were to hit some kind of economic downturn, you would be screwed. You would be in such a position that it wouldn't be. And I think Steve mentioned this on the last interview that he did with you. States have they run these kinds of reports of like how much available cash they would have to fund this, and they have I forget what they're called, but they have yearly reports that they release. And there was I think there may be 4 states in the entire U.S. that conceivably could put together some kind of public, universal public health program. But again, there would only be 4 states, and the rest of us are left out in the cold. And it'd be like California, and maybe I don't know, I don't know what they were, but
Yeah, I would
I
probably
think
think California, New York,
New York would be one of
Massachusetts,
them.
and
Yeah,
I can't think of the fourth one, but I know those
yeah.
3 would be the ones that I would think of first.
Right. They have enough excess not just necessarily money, but also excess resources, enough capacity to provide for, because ultimately and then we'll get into this too. But ultimately, that's the limiting factor for the federal government. It's not about the money; it's about the real resources that are available. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But so right, so you'd have these 4 states that are doing it, and everything else would be left out. But then if you didn't have capital flight, if you didn't have this kind of race to the bottom phenomenon that happens everywhere when you try to, a state or a locality tries to put together some kind of public program, and they would fund it by taxing rich people, taxing rich communities. Well, those communities are going to go somewhere else, and then where are you left? Or you're going to hit a recession, and then your tax base is gone. You can see it in like public schools. So all of our public schools in the United States are zip code funded, right? If you live in a rich area, well, your public schools might be pretty good. If you live in a not so great area where your tax base is responsible for funding all those things, then your public schools are not going to be so good. Ultimately, as MMTers, and I think Steve said this, we feel as if it should be necessary for state taxes, for municipal taxes. All states, all municipalities should be funded federally. There should be no necessity for, if you want to have a secondary tax for some kind of initiative, if you want to have one, okay. But there shouldn't be any necessity to do so. All states should have the full capacity to provide whatever needs for their communities, for their citizens that they need. But we have extreme austerity as it is at the federal level. So that's does that make sense as far as why?
It makes perfect sense, and that's where I was making, because at this point when I was making the argument, I made the argument of eventually you're going to end up taxing citizens. Yeah. And everybody doesn't make the same. You have low income, you have citizens that make $0 because they're unhoused. Yeah. You have low income workers, middle wage workers, seniors. You're going to tax them to pay for it. It never made sense to me. And yet I keep seeing more states, and they're doing this with reparations also. And I'm like, this isn't. Now that one I can get into a whole thing. I'm like, reparations was not a state by state crime. I mean, not a state, but it's not a state by state issue. This is something the federal government put its stamp of approval on and said, enslave those Black people. Yep. Make sure to take away opportunities. That was the federal government giving its stamp of approval. Yep. So just because, if let's say Massachusetts gets reparations, well, everybody moves to Massachusetts like that. Like it doesn't. Yeah. I just never understood. I kind of understand the argument, because what they're saying is, if it happens in one state, then it'll happen there, and they don't just gain steam.
Right.
But why do it that way when, if only 4 states can sustain a Medicare for All program? Yeah. That leaves what? 40. My math is terrible. 46 states. 46 states. 46 states are just like, oh well, and don't live in Puerto Rico, don't live in Guam, don't live in any of the territories.
And you do see that in terms of like expansion of Medicare, right? Where I think you had mentioned this, that not all government programs are mandatory, right? So there are certain states, I don't know if it's like Alabama or Mississippi. There are a couple that didn't take the Obama's expansion of Medicare.
Indiana was one of those states.
Indiana was one of them. Okay, right. So if you do it state by state, if you don't have these kinds of these set as national priorities and it funded at the federal level, it allows states kind of off the hook. And if you're in a very conservative area that doesn't want to provide these things to its people, even if they're very poor states, like a lot of those other states are very, very poor states. And they're they're maybe greatest need for some of these public programs. Well, they're going to be left off. And if you're in a rich state and you're going to say, okay, we're gonna fund this Medicare for all state program by taxing our ultra wealthy and corporations, well, you're inducing a race to the bottom effect, where those corporations, the capital flight phenomena, where those corporations, those rich people, are going to say, well, I'm just going to go somewhere else. I'm going to go to Texas, where they have no tax, no income taxes. I'm going to go to New Hampshire, or wherever else. So if and I'll just say this as well. California did pass a kind of a state healthcare bill and they have a supermajority. I think they've had a supermajority the majority of years for the last 10 or 15, I think. And Governor Newsom rejected it anyway, vetoed it anyway. I think what's important to realize, both at the state and the federal level, is our government doesn't operate for working people. There's a fantastic study. I know that Steve mentioned it the first interview, but there's a fantastic study by two academics. I think it was at Princeton. It's called the Gillens and Page study. And if you want to, I could show it on my screen, but it's okay. I don't need to. But I'll just read you the quote that their major finding was the preferences of average Americans appear to have only a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact on public policy. And that was they looked at 20 years of legislative data, and they compared average preferences for policy, average working people's preferences for policy versus elites. And they found, the elites was kind of like it was kind of a wavy curve that kind of sort of went up, that kind of was close to how you would want, like, an ideal. If you want if you want a policy, the more like the legislative likelihood that it's going to go, it looks like this, the ideal. And the elites is kind of a wavy. Average people, it's a flat line. It's right. Zero. There's no relationship between what ordinary people want and need and what gets passed. And so whether it's in California at the state level, but especially, and as well as at the federal level, we have to realize that we're not going to get what we need by voting for this progressive, regardless of how well-intentioned they might seem. We have to learn, I think, maybe Fred Hampton style, but also an MLK style, and going back to labor movements, going back to women's suffrage. I think we've been kind of lobotomized from how real change is forced, and it's forced in the streets. It's when we did have unions, it was forced by union power. It's forced by organizing power, which has been on decline for the last 60, 70 years now. We think that the limit on political your politics is voting red or blue. And clearly, I think that actually the majority of people recognize, the Americans recognize, that it does make a bit of difference, because we have some of the worst voting participation rates in the world. I think they rightly recognize that it doesn't matter if I'm going to be voting for Democrat, the capitalist Party A or capitalist Party B. Neither of them serve our interests. They all say that they have very similar policies, whether it's on war or it's on domestic policy or whether it's on international policy. So
here's a question I want to ask, because again, what irritates me about politicians irritates me, especially my more right-leaning, well, at the left, Democrats do it too, is I hear this statement, a politician say, they're spending your tax dollars on XYZ. As little as I know about MMT, I know that statement is all the way wrong.
Yeah.
I know why they make it. But my question to you is, how do we combat it? Right?
Yeah.
Because we know, I mean, I've heard Joe Stein make that comment. I've
Yep.
heard Bernie Sanders make that comment.
Yep.
And I'm like, no, my tax dollars, if I sat and thought about it, and I had to, we have so many wars going on, I get them all confused. But there
Yeah.
was one war of ours that literally cost $300 million per day. I think that's the number.
Crazy.
Not a week, not a year, not over 2 years. Every single day we're spending $300 million. Where did we get that money from?
Yep.
The government just they brought it into existence. I know that. I think that was right, right? Yes, that was right. They just spoke it into existence and said,
yep,
for this, we're gonna do it. But yet you'll hear a politician say, well, your money is and I'm like, no, it's not there. It's not my money is not going to fund the genocide. Technically, with MMT, we could fund both. Of course, I'm opposed to war. I don't like war. I think it's disgusting, apprehensible. But what do we do to combat that argument?
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I'm like, no matter how many times I tell people, no, it's not your money. It's not your money. They'll say, no, that's my tax money. I'm like, no.
It's tough.
No.
It is really tough because I think the left uses that kind of, the left in particular uses that narrative because it wants to compel the public towards some kind of personal responsibility for our federal government's really grotesque immoral acts, whether it's endless war in Afghanistan or Iraq, these invasions, or it's the genocide in Gaza. The left will use it as a kind of to compel you against the immoral things that our government is doing on your behalf, right? And they try to compel you, try to say, this is so wrong. How can you kill these children with your tax dollars? But it's the framing is inaccurate, right? Because federal taxes delete money out of circulation, and they never exist to fund anything. And so all money that the federal government spends is new money created on demand by congressional appropriations bills. But then also if you use that narrative, ultimately it's always going to end up getting turned against us. It's all if you use that taxpayer dollar narrative that taxes fund spending, then when it's the government turns around against you and you're no longer in power, or then the conservatives will always, without a doubt, whether conservative Republicans or conservative Democrats, will always use that same narrative to say, okay, this is why we can't afford Medicare for all. Okay, this is why we have to cut public spending.
And Joe Biden used that same argument. How are we going to pay for it? I'm like, the exact same way we pay for the wars.
Right. One thing I think you can say is, if you're approached, and sometimes I'll try to ask this, and I don't get a good answer from the people who are using the narrative. But if you think that your tax dollars pay for this war or pay for this genocide, which tax increases were they? You're saying that there's only this sum of money that all spending comes from. Okay. And then you didn't have a war beforehand, right? You didn't have the genocide beforehand. We weren't funding, not at least up to that level. If they increased the funding, we sent $100 billion to Ukraine. We send $100 billion to Israel to fund these grotesque things that are happening on your behalf. Where is the war tax? What tax increase did the government pass, the federal government pass, to fund the thing that you're talking about, that you're so opposed to? They never have an answer for it because it doesn't exist, because that's not where funding comes from. So I'd say that's a possible response when someone says, okay, I don't want my tax dollars going to this. Okay, which tax increase did they impose?
And I could always say, well, they don't, because guess
what?
Don't. They actually don't, because it doesn't exist.
Sometimes it's helpful to repose it as a question. Okay, you're opposed to this. Okay, tell me which tax increase it was, and then I'll shut up. But they can't find it because it doesn't exist. So and then you can go on
Yeah.
to describe, okay, here are the reasons why you have to at the very least, if you just replace the word tax dollars with public money. I don't want my public money going towards this, because that's what it is. It's not tax dollar money, it's public money. I don't
Right.
want my public money, the money that my government freely creates on demand, to go towards this massacre, grotesque massacre of women and children and innocent refugees. That's horrible. I don't want to do it for a host of reasons, right? I don't want to do it because it destabilizes our world, because it destroys our environment. I mean, think about all the fossil fuels and all the destruction and all the um, you know environmental um, costs that those wars have. And I don't want our real resources, which is actually, I hope we can get to this a little bit at the end. I know we're close to the end, but I don't want my real resources, whether it's metals, or if it's our land, or our labor, which is maybe the most important real resource of them all. I don't want those real resources going towards building these machines of death. I want our labor. I want our infrastructure. I want our raw materials going towards giving people healthcare. Right. I want our real resources going towards things that will actually benefit us, not just the military-industrial complex.
That is a great answer, because I'm just like, no, but I will use that. And I hear it so often. And then I hear politicians say it. I'm like, why are you lying to people like this? Why are you standing there telling a ball fake? And I had Steve say, who is it that you've talked to? He's like, yeah, they consistently say it. I'm like, and it seems like we're going to just have to be like staying on people's like, no,
Yeah.
no, it's public money, not tax
Yep.
money, public
Yep.
money that's
Public
created.
money. Yep. Yep. And it is most infuriating, and it is most depressing when it comes from progressives. Bernie Sanders, in 2016, his economic advisor, main economic advisor, was Stephanie Kelton, who is maybe the most popular of all MMTers. She's the one who wrote The Deficit Myth. She has a documentary that came out I think it was just last year, called Finding the Money. She's a very popular MMTer. Her politics are terrible, honestly. She's very liberal, and she thinks that all we need to do is just teach MMT to Congress, and then we'll get everything that we want. I do very much appreciate Stephanie Kelton, because she's taught me an enormous amount of stuff. But she was one of the most popular MMTers. She was Bernie's economic advisor, and yet he still, to this day, talks about taxing the billionaires to pay for the Green New Deal, and taxing the billionaires to pay for Medicare for all, and taxing the billionaires to pay for this and that. Ro Khanna as well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's difficult, because I think that they believe, at least I think they are. They're not. You can separate Bernie and Ro Khanna and some of the other progressive legislators, maybe, because they're good intentioned. Maybe I'm not. I used to be a huge Bernie guy, so I think a lot of us did. But at the very least, they supposedly know better. And if you know better, do better.
Do better.
Right.
Like, do better. You know better. You know this isn't right. But I think that's the thing that just irritates me, is the public just, it's like, no, so I'm going to start using, instead of taxpayer, I'm going to use public money. I think that's a very good thing. Now, you said you wanted to talk about something else, and I want you to talk about that.
Oh, inflation. Yeah, maybe it was that. Was that what it was?
Yes, and I said, let's skip it because my eyes are going to go like this.
Yeah. Right. It's funny, because a lot of people who criticize MMT, it was funny. I was actually in a conversation with my brother the other day, and at the very end, when I was talking about MMT, he was like, "Well, MMT is cockamamie because inflation. You never, he doesn't care about inflation. Doesn't talk about inflation." What's ironic is MMT as an economic theory cares more about inflation than maybe any other economic theory. It is the limiting factor on government spending. So when we say the government can spend as much as it wants and for whatever program that we want, that's true technically, but inflation is going to be the limiting factor, and it's not because of what Milton Friedman called quantity of money theory, which I'd kind of gotten to a little bit before when we were talking about fiat currency and a gold-backed currency, a fixed exchange rate, which is when you have something backing it, right? We have gold backing or silver backing it, versus a floating exchange rate, which is really where the value of the dollar is based on the federal government's ability to tax, and the restraints are real resource availability. So raw materials, land, infrastructure, a trained labor force, technology, and maybe a labor force that's trained is maybe one of the most important. So some of these limiting factors of real resources are expandable, right? So like think about like Medicare for all, or a national health plan that you want to implement. So finding the money for the federal government that would want to implement a national health service is never the issue. Again, it creates money out of thin air to fund corporate subsidies, to fund endless war, to fund genocide. What matters to the federal government as far as a constraint of whether it can spend on these priorities or not is whether the real productive capacity and the real resource availability is there. So if you have Medicare for all, you want to implement Medicare for all, and you say you need to spend X amount of dollars to get everyone Medicare for all, or to get everyone health insurance so that they can go to their local hospital and get treatment for whatever, for an operation, for a checkup, for who knows what. The limiting factor for a national health care plan like that is going to be, do you have the real resources? Do you have enough doctors? Do you have enough hospitals? Do you have enough hospital beds? Do you have enough medication? Do you have enough nurses? Do you have the infrastructure available to provide for all those people who are going to go to the hospital and be like, okay, I need this operation, or I need a checkup, or I need to have my teeth fixed, or whatever. I know Steve uses that example a lot because but it's never the money that the government will need to find, and that's why Stephanie Kelton's documentary is called "Finding the Money." Finding the money is never the issue. It's whether you have the productive capacity to produce those things. So, and inflation is just an increase in the average cost of an average set of consumer goods that the public buys. And inflation is really, despite people's conceptions of inflation being led by how much money is out there, it's not, because again we're not tying it to some kind of limited commodity. It's limited by inflation is caused by primarily, number one, market abuse. So capitalists, when they raise prices, they raise prices because they exist to maximize profit. They're not trying to get as many distribute as much stuff to everyone as possible. They're not in the business of trying to provide everything to everybody, right? They're in the business of making as much money as possible. And if they see signals from the government that the government is putting money into the economy that people have at their disposal, they're going to raise prices. And in COVID, we saw this actually. There were private discussions, corporate discussions. Okay, we see the government is going to be spending. We think we can raise prices this such and such amount, and the public will still keep buying because maybe they need to, because these are essentials. You can't go without food, right? Grocery store is going to raise price on meat or whatever staples that they have because, well, what are you going to do? You're going to starve. So that's number one source of inflation is capitalists raising prices because they exist to maximize profit. The second, which is one that we already kind of talked about, is the real resource availability, the productive capacity of your nation, of your society. Do you have enough productive capacity to serve all the people that are going to be demanding that product? If you don't, if we have a lot of people who are going to be demanding this, and you don't have the ability to produce the things that people demand, well, then the price is going to go up. So you, as an MMTer, you want to, and this is going to be very, very counterintuitive, but you limit inflation, number one, by taxing and regulating market abusers so that they don't price gouge. But number two, and this is the counterintuitive one, you actually need to spend more now to build up your productive capacity so that people can find the things that they're going to need to want to buy to prevent future inflation. It's kind of counterintuitive, I know, but and that's why we say in MMT that it's not just taxing is one not solution, but one tactic that the government can use to limit inflation, because you're pulling buying power away from the public. But it's not the most effective one, arguably. Fiscal policy is going to be where you're spending and creating the productive capacity for people to buy the things that they're going to need is the more proactive one, I'd say. Does that make sense?
That made a whole lot more sense than I thought it was going to make. I thought you were going to just throw terms at me, and I'm like, what? One thing, and as we come to a close, I do want to, because at one of the meetings, I heard someone talk about something that I'm going to definitely, I don't know whether it'll be you, whether it'll be Steve, to have back for another show and talk about something I thought I was for, but now I'm starting to double think universal based income.
Ah, yes.
And I don't want to get into it now.
Yes.
But I thought, oh, well, yeah, you give people a little extra $500 a month, and then you go, and then you do this and this and this. I definitely want to have that discussion the next time. And I don't know when the next time will be for you or for Steve, but I would definitely invite one of you to come back and talk about that.
Sure. No, it is a really important discussion for from an MMT perspective. I'll just say this. As MMTers, we advocate for a federal job guarantee, not a UBI, because it maximizes employment. While maximize employment while limiting inflation. If you just give a whole bunch of money to people, that doesn't increase the productive capacity. It will actually create more demand without increasing productive capacity. You'll be giving the opportunity for people to buy all the things that are out there, and it also doesn't limit it doesn't limit the capitalists from doing what they always do, which is price gouge. If you hand out $500 to people, just like we were talking about signals from the government, if the government just hands out a bunch of money to people, and you don't regulate corporations, capitalists at all, they're just going to jack up the prices.
Well,
on everything.
Remember, we saving all that. We're saving all that for the next
Okay. I just want to give that as a
understand.
Preview.
Yeah, I'm like,
okay.
Because that's what you do and that's what you should do. But how do people connect to Real Progressives?
Great. So we have uh, a podcast. Obviously, it's called Macro and Cheese. That comes out every Saturday morning, and then on Tuesdays we have you know what? Actually, I can switch up my screen maybe, and I'll show what some of these links. So if you can see that. Oh no, you can't see it very because I might be cut off a little bit. But if you just go to realprogressives.org, that's our website. We have also a Substack. We have a Patreon. Our YouTube is listed there as well. youtube.com/@realprogressives. And we also have a Facebook group. If you just search for MMT for Real Progressives on Facebook, we have a lot of great discussions going on there about MMT, but also all sorts of other stuff. So that's how to reach us. You can just go to realprogressives.org, though. All of our links should be there. And you should, anyone who watched this tonight or seeing it tomorrow, you're more than welcome to join us on our Macro and Chill, which is our kind of webinar where we listen to our latest podcast and discuss it. It comes on every Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you go to our website, realprogressives.org, there'll be an alert at the very top that will send you to our registration link for Zoom.
I'm going to put that in the chat so that
yes.
Let me do that real quick.
Yeah, it's just realprogressives.org.
Oh my gosh, I can't spell.
I wonder if I can do it. Here.
Nope, I got it.
Okay, you got it? Okay.
But I didn't do the H.
There you go. You got it. That's perfect. Realprogressives.org. Yep.
Everybody, again, I apologize. I literally thought this interview was tomorrow. I thought, oh, well, we'll just come in at 7. We'll be done at 8. I'll jump in the meeting. I'll have everybody say, hey, Tracy. And then I'll say, I don't want to ask a question because this is going to sound stupid. And then they'll say, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Blah, 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 blah. I thought it was tomorrow, so I definitely apologize for this. But I do want to encourage everybody to share it if you're watching, because I see we do still have people watching. Share this video with 5 other people. Please do that. Please do that. I'm not going to play my commercial for my new podcast. It's going to come out in 2026. I'll save that for next week, which will be back on Tuesdays. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you so very much. I believe I'm a lot better than I was. I thought I was great with Steve, and then they started asking questions, and I got confused again. But I'm back on track.
Happens to me too. I still get asked questions. Yep, I hear you.
And, what? But I'm back on track.
Good, great.
And I do want to talk about something else, though, and I will end it here. We need more Black faces in this movement. I'm just gonna say it, and because I'm like, okay, now I know I cannot be the only person that looks like me. No. There's no way. So I'll just leave that where it is, and you all can kick me out and say whatever you want to say about me. But I am going to play the outro. Remember to subscribe, like, share, comment, subscribe, like, share, comment. One more time. Like, subscribe, like, share, comment. Have a great evening. I'll see you all next Tuesday. And we'll just go from there.
Great.